man, I am so excited to be with you guys tonight. I've had a great weekend. I hope you have. You might be looking around. Things might look a little bit different. I know that we don't have these decorations up in the MC building. That's actually because I'm at home. I'm actually shooting this sermon from home. I'll take a little picture and show it to you right here. The camera that I brought home actually didn't have a microphone port, so I had to duct tape my phone to the tripod. It looks pretty funny, but it's alright. But I hope you guys are doing well, and I also hope that you've been enjoying this series that we've been doing called The Bigger Picture. Hopefully you've been getting something out of it, and just in case you don't remember what this series has been about, we've been talking about how in life sometimes we miss the bigger picture. We see things only from our perspective, which means we only see one part of the story, and that causes us to miss the rest of what might be happening around us. The bigger picture. Now, before we jump in today, let me start by asking you a really important question. How often do you do the right thing? Maybe you don't have to put your answer in the live chat, but what I want you to do is think about it for just a second. How often do you know the right thing to do and choose not to do it? I think so many of us would admit that there's at least a few decisions we can look back on and say that we knew the right thing to do and still did the opposite. I know I have for sure. I can remember a couple days ago when I went to Walmart, and you think it would have been like a movie scene, like this $20 bill fell right in front of me. It was crazy. I was like, oh my gosh. And all these thoughts started going through my head, and I actually didn't know the right thing to do. So I picked it up, and I thought about it. I said, should I take it inside, take it back to the manager, or should I just keep it and count this as a blessing from God? And that day, you know what I did? I kept it. But I look back and I see, you know what? That probably wasn't the right thing to do. And there's one thing I want us to all agree on today, and that's doing the right thing isn't always easy. See, sometimes choosing to do the right thing means that it might not be fun, it might not be exciting, or it might not be the most popular thing. It might not be the thing we might actually want to do. And that can make choosing the right thing in any situation a hard choice to make. Honestly, I think that's because doing the right thing usually costs us something. See, if I would have done the right thing, that would have cost me specifically $20. So I want you to think about it in your own context. You know, the right thing to do is probably to be honest with your parents, coaches, or teachers. But if you are, you might get in trouble for what you did, which means doing the right thing will have a consequence or a punishment. And that will definitely cost you something. You know the right thing is to babysit your siblings when your parents ask, but you know, honestly, you just don't feel like dealing with them. Doing the right thing might cost you some freedom. You know the right thing isn't to say yes to the guy who asked you out, even if you know that you aren't allowed to have a boyfriend. You're not allowed to be in a relationship. See, doing the right thing might cost you the relationship, and that feels like too high of a cost. You know the right thing is to be honest with a friend when you're having a bad feeling in a relationship. But if you do, you might end up in a fight where you might have some sort of conflict with them, and that conflict is a cost that you really don't want to have to pay. See, the list could go on and on. See, the reality is that we've all been in some situations where we've had to choose to do the right thing. See, sometimes doing the right things feels really easy. It's an obvious choice. But other times, doing the right thing is really complicated. When we start to count the cost of doing the right thing, suddenly the choice isn't so clear anymore. And sometimes it's difficult to do the right thing because we simply don't know what the right thing to do actually is. So here's the question. What can we do today, right now, to help us be prepared to do the right thing no matter what? Even when it's difficult or unclear or going to cost us a lot. How can we make decisions today that will have a positive impact on the bigger picture of our lives? So friends, let's take a closer look at the story that we've been talking about this entire time, and that's the story of Joseph. You see, as we look at Joseph's life, we have the privilege of seeing the bigger picture. We see the whole story. But at the time, see, Joseph only saw what was happening right in front of him. He started out as a guy who had some conflict with his brothers. He wound up being thrown into an empty well and sold into slavery. It's not the happiest story ever. You see, but God had big plans for Joseph. See, there was actually a bigger picture that Joseph couldn't see yet. A picture that was actually pretty incredible. So incredible that we're actually still talking about it today, 2,000 years later. And thankfully, we get a front row seat to all of it because another famous character in the Bible, named Moses, decided to write down the stories of his ancestors and their lives. See, one of his written records was the book called Genesis, and it's a part of the Old Testament in the Bible. In that book, you see, Moses wrote the story of Joseph's life in great detail. And one of the things he wrote about gives us an idea of how to do the right thing when we know that the right thing is hard to do. See, we're picking up Joseph's story right where he was sold as a slave to a group of traders. Joseph was actually eventually bought by a pretty powerful Egyptian named Potiphar. I might still be saying that wrong. I said it wrong at the high school. I said Potiphar, but now I'm saying it Potiphar. Shane will probably still laugh at me because I still don't know how to say it, but that's okay. But just be prepared. I might be saying it wrong the entire time. But that's okay. See, this guy was a big shot in the government and the captain of Pharaoh's guard. And after some time working for Potiphar, Joseph was actually put in charge of Potiphar's entire house and everything he owned. So even though Joseph was in a bad situation, things kind of seemed to be turning out good for him. Or at least they did for a little bit. This is actually where the story takes a turn. Let's look at what happens next. Now Joseph was well built and he was handsome. And after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." This is Genesis 39, 6b through 7. Can we talk about how awkward this is? How bad this situation just got? See, Joseph was this good-looking dude who was working really hard for his boss, Potiphar, when suddenly Potiphar's wife suddenly took notice of him. And just like that, she invited him to do something that was actually meant for her and her husband, not her and Joseph. Potiphar's wife was basically inviting Joseph to have an affair with her. And I think we all know that that's a pretty complicated invitation. Now let's put this in our present day context for a second. This would kind of be like your bestie's boyfriend texting you or Snapchatting you or DMing you, asking you to kind of hang out on the side. Sure, they might be cute, but they're with your bestie and not you. So having them ask you to sneak around and hang out on low key isn't really that great of a situation for you to be in, right? It's an invitation for you to do something that you know isn't right. See, and the same was true with Joseph. There was a lot at stake here for him. He could have easily given into the temptation of Potiphar's wife, and he could have let the invitation go to his head. He could have considered what he could have gotten away with and decided to give it a shot, but all of that, was it worth it? All of those little choices that ultimately could have led him to have this affair with Potiphar's wife? See, well, they could have cost Joseph something. And Joseph was trying to do the right thing. So he decided to take a different route. So let's go back to the story. It says, but he refused. Said, "With me in charge," he told her, "my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he is entrusted to my care. See, no one is greater in this house than I am. See, my master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. This is Genesis 39, 8 through 10. So instead of giving in to Potiphar's wife, Joseph decided to do what was right. Not just one time, but over and over and over again. See, every time Potiphar's wife came to Joseph with the same invitation, Joseph made the choice to do the right thing. Now you'd think that because Joseph made the right choice, he would have a perfect life after that, right? Everything worked out great for him. That this right choice was so obvious and clear that you'd think it wouldn't cost Joseph anything. You'd think it would all work out in the end. But believe it or not, doing the right thing eventually wound up costing Joseph his freedom. And that's a pretty big cost. See, sometime later, Potiphar's wife came to Joseph again with her inappropriate invitation. And only this time, she grabbed his cloak. See, Joseph tried so hard to do the right thing that he took off running, leaving the cloak behind in her hands. Now, because Potiphar's wife obviously did some pretty sketchy things, she told everyone that Joseph pursued her. And she said that when she screamed for help, Joseph ran and left his cloak behind. So of course, Potiphar wasn't happy when he heard this story. So he threw Joseph right into prison. Now this definitely wasn't the happy ending you expect for someone who chose to do the right thing. You see, sometimes doing the right thing will get you an applause and approval, and sometimes it won't. See, sometimes doing the right thing will come at a cost that seems completely unfair. And that's what happened here with Joseph. See, but Joseph did the right thing because he had integrity. And doing the right thing regardless of the cost is the definition of integrity. See, Joseph couldn't see the bigger picture here. He didn't know that choosing the right thing would get him thrown into prison. And even when he was in prison, Joseph didn't know that God was still working, still creating that incredible picture for his life. See, but Joseph, he didn't really need to know because he was operating with integrity. Joseph knew that choosing the right thing was the best situation no matter what happened next. And friends, that's what I want you to know too. Here's the biggest thing that I think we can get from Joseph's story. When you can't see the bigger picture, do the next right thing. See, in these moments, Joseph was faced with a choice because he didn't know the bigger picture. He couldn't see it yet, but he still had to choose to do the next right thing. He chose to hold on to his integrity. So how can we do the same, friends? When we're struggling to do the next right thing or make the next right choice, what can we do to help us hold on to our integrity? First, you can see your situation. What situation are you in where you need to do the next right thing? Maybe it's in a relationship that might be starting to push your boundaries. Maybe it's in a conversation that you've been avoiding having with your parents. Maybe it's in a friendship that needs to change. Whatever it is, friends, I want you to think about the situation you're in where you need to take a step in the right direction. See the situation where you need help in making the right choice. Second, I want you to identify the next right thing. Do you need to confess something to your parent? Do you need to ask a friend for help with something? Do you need to apologize to someone in your life? Do you need to not go to that party that you were invited to? Do you need to stop looking at someone else's homework? Do you need to have a tough conversation with a boyfriend or a girlfriend? In your situation, what's the next right thing? Now here's the deal. It's easy to sit and think about the next right thing to do. And it's even easier to totally forget about it when you leave this YouTube video here in a couple minutes. So the last thing I want you to do is to tell somebody the next right thing you're trying to do. Whether it's your small group leader or a trusted friend or someone at home, tell them about the next right thing you want to do. And then ask them to ask you if you did the thing that you said you were going to do. See, let them help you take a step forward towards doing the right thing right now. Because taking these steps today is something that will shape our lives for the better of tomorrow. Friends, there is power in accountability. So remember, when you don't have the bigger picture in order to make the right choice. It's okay. But instead, I want you to, day by day, when you're faced with all sorts of decisions and choices, I want you to choose the next right thing. Friends, when you can't see the bigger picture, do the next right thing. And as you head to going through these small group discussions with your parents tonight, I want you to think about your answer to this question. In what situation do I need to do the next right thing? Friends, I hope you are actually doing those small group questions with your parents. I know it's a little bit different. I know it might seem a little bit awkward, but it's in the small group where I think you get the most out of what we do here at Embassy. You know, Shane and I can get up here and talk for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, and we could talk about anything. But it's when you go into those small groups with your parents and small groups back here at Embassy, when those are a thing again, that's when real life change happens. That's when you get to talk about the situations that you're going through and apply them to the Bible and how the Bible answers your problems. Friends, I love you. I hope you're taking those things seriously. I hope you're enjoying this series. Shane and I miss you so much. We will see you soon.